Well, welcome back. In our last session, we actually talked about the definition of portfolio management. And just as a refresher, we want to actually take a moment to actually go into a little bit more detail in that definition and one aspect of it. And so, one of the aspects of portfolio management was that portfolio management has an assessment, and that you assess the elements, your planning elements, to make sure that the plan you have in place is in alignment with the strategy and objectives. And this is really important because if you want to achieve the outcomes, you have to make sure that the plan, the things that you want to do, will actually achieve those outcomes and that nothing else gets in. If you don't have that, then you'll have a lack of focus in your organization. And that's what tends to create what we call dark work that doesn't align to the strategy and objectives. What are your thoughts, Rhonda?
Yeah, as we discussed last time, this is all a top-down planning approach. You want to look at your strategy, you want to look at what you want to achieve with your objectives, and come up with a set of work to support that directly. All the other work should be considered dark work. And if you don't have a way to check for that on a regular basis, you'll get out of alignment.
So the big $1 million question is, how do we make this happen? And in order to actually get into the how, I want to elicit some help here. I want to play a quick video from a Google talk that Ken Schwaber, the co-creator of Scrum, actually did for Google. And so I'm going to back this up a little bit and play this clip.
Were situations where they were like, well, we need another month, couldn't quite get it done. They all came up with something that was a competitive response. All of the aspects that are in Scrum, the key ones, are in there. They were in a time box. Everything in Scrum is a time box. And that's so things don't go on forever. Well, we could think up the design, but we need another, while more come back. So everything is a time box.
Now, I wanted to play this clip because what Ken actually speaks to is Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law dictates that work tends to expand to the time that you put into it. So if you want to make sure that we actually are focused on the things that are most important, then you want to create a time box. And that time box, I'm going to check to make sure that we are doing what we need to do in order to create the outcomes that are in line with our strategy. What do you think, Rhonda?
Yeah, absolutely. And having a time box really keeps people on task. It really keeps things focused. It ensures a bunch of dark work isn't creeping in. You have to have a time box. And this is probably not news to people who are executing Scrum. They're used to that at a team level. But what is often forgot is this time box also applies to the portfolio level. And if it's the same concept and same principles, and if you don't apply it at the portfolio level, the same thing will happen. As Ken described, all kinds of work, people will just make up all kinds of work to fit into the time that's allotted. And if you don't have a time box to confine that, you're going to get dark work.
Now, the one thing you want to do is when I do this assessment, I need to actually check. So I need to have portfolio acceptance criteria. And I need to check to make sure that the items that were actually fulfilled were done in a time frame that allows me to accomplish the outcomes that we wanted in the desired frame that we have for those outcomes with the resources that we have. And so I'm going to actually do some forecasting, right? At the end of the time box, I'm going to look at, well, what did it take? How far did we get? And at this pace, let's extrapolate in order to figure out how long it would take to get all the outcomes, the total benefits that we want. And then I can actually really make a determination on whether or not I'm at a pace where this still makes sense to do, or am I at a pace where there's maybe some other work that we could actually get more benefit from, and so we should pivot. What do you think, Rhonda?
Yeah, so there has to be decision making from the leadership who's overseeing the portfolio. And so there has to be some tools that they're looking at, some tools that they're using in order to make those decisions. They should be looking at, where are we today, forecasting what it looks like going forward, how much cost are we forecasting, how much have we spent, what are the benefits we're getting, what's the value, and what do we expect to get, and see if it still makes sense. Because if it doesn't, you're going to want to pivot and not waste your money.
This is a leadership function that leadership should take on and not delegate. And what tends to happen in a lot of our organizations is that this work is thought-provoking work and it's tough. And leadership thinks that is easy, so they tend to want to delegate it down to other people. But it's not easy. And the reason that you got into leadership is because you have the skill sets to do this assessment. And a lot of people that you hire don't have those skill sets.
And I would go even further, Brian. I would say this is the most important job leadership has. If they are not making decisions around strategic execution, I would say they're not doing their job. This is a bit controversial, perhaps, because, as you said, a lot of people like to delegate this work down to the lower levels of the organization, but often those folks who are being asked to make these decisions don't have the right context and visibility. This is a leadership job.
Well, folks, I think you've heard it here. We've actually laid this out that you must have a time box. Someone has to check to see where we're at and forecast out will we meet the outcomes that we desire. And this is a leadership function that should not be delegated. With that, I think I've learned a lot here. I hope you have too. I want to thank you for your time of attention, and we'll actually meet again next time.